On his very first day in an adult prison, the juvenile offender taught the guards a harsh lesson. The standoff dragged on. The guards had no way to deal with him, but what he did wasn't meant to be used as leverage. He was simply rebellious. After being comforted and persuaded by a psychologist, he finally gave in. As a result, Jack was locked in solitary confinement for 3 days and 3 nights, but he showed no signs of remorse. The moment he was released, he got into trouble again. During lunch, he slammed his tray onto the table. The elderly black inmate serving food was clearly displeased. He directly used his hand to place the food onto the tray. He wanted to teach this arrogant white kid a lesson.
102. Take up.
Just as the two were about to come to blows, a guard stepped in and defused the situation. Carrying his tray, he returned to his cell. Even though the food had been touched by someone else's hands, he still wolfed it down, because he had no choice. Otherwise he'd go hungry. But he couldn't swallow the humiliation of being provoked by the black inmate. Ever since Jack was sent to juvenile detention at the age of 10, he had understood one thing. In a place like this, the moment you show even a hint of weakness, endless bullying will follow. So he immediately began making a weapon for self-defense. First he crushed a disposable razor underfoot and removed the blade. Then he melted the plastic handle of a toothbrush with a lighter. He embedded the sharp blade into the softened plastic. Once it cooled, he had made a weapon resembling a dagger. Next, he melted the base of the toothbrush. He pressed it firmly onto a screw on the side of the light fixture. After it cooled, it became a custom-made tool. He unscrewed the light fixture and hid the weapon inside to avoid detection by the guards. Whenever he had spare time, he also did push-ups to build strength. During recreation time, Jack ran into James, a man he had bad blood with. To his surprise, James was openly dealing contraband right in front of the guards. That alone proved James had powerful backing in the prison. As Jack was wondering how he could face someone as influential as James all by himself, a middle-aged inmate with an extremely intimidating face walked straight toward him. The man was none other than the father he had been separated from for years. A faint trace of joy flashed through Jack's eyes, but in his father's eyes, there was only disappointment and shock. He didn't ask why his son had ended up in prison. Instead, he blamed his wife for failing to raise their son properly. 13 years earlier, his wife had fallen into drug addiction and a reckless lifestyle because of a bad man. He personally killed that man and was sentenced to prison. At the time, Jack was only 5 years old. The long years behind bars had almost completely severed the bond between father and son. His childhood and teenage years passed without a father's love. Jack hated his father, yet he couldn't stop longing for that fatherly affection. However, reality was far crueler than he imagined. His father didn't offer a single warm word. He coldly told him to go out to the yard and fit in with the others. He warned him not to stand out or attract attention. Jack felt a lump in his throat, but in the end, he silently followed his father's instructions. Even though his father sternly told him to stay out of trouble, Jack had no intention of being obedient. Back in his cell, he wanted a cigarette to calm his emotions, but he discovered his lighter no longer worked. So he asked an inmate in the opposite cell for a light. The man refused. Apologetically, he explained that he only had one lighter. Upset by his father's attitude, Jack tossed and turned on his bunk. Eventually, he drifted off to sleep. Suddenly, the inmate quietly entered his cell.
Brother. That flame, yeah.
Startled awake, Jack instinctively fought back. He ended up knocking the man unconscious. Just as he was about to catch his breath, he noticed the lighter in his hand. Only then did he realize he had misunderstood the man.
Fuck's sake, don't fucking die on me. Let's wait till I'm ready. No, cross the bank to the end, miss.
He immediately hoisted the inmate onto his back and rushed toward the infirmary for help, but he knew the guards didn't know the full story. They would naturally assume the two had gotten into a fight. No one would believe it was all a misunderstanding.
Get in your cells now!
He turned around and sprinted back to his cell. He snapped off the external antenna from his radio. Then he squeezed baby oil onto the floor, quickly removing his shirt. He covered his entire body with the oil from head to toe. That way, even if the guards got close, they would have a hard time restraining him. To subdue Jack, the guards brought over a large bucket of sand. Jack gripped the table leg with both hands, ready to fight to the bitter end. The guards threw sand onto the floor to prevent slipping, but Jack's body was coated in baby oil. Even after being covered in sand, he still managed to break free through sheer agility. After knocking one guard down, he used the antenna to take another guard hostage.
Fucking come any closer, mate. I'll fucking skewer this thing like a fucking hot roast. Yeah, fuck off. Drop that fucking thing and fuck off now. Sharp it.
He forced everyone else out of the cell. Then he started joking around, like something straight out of a movie.
Tell you what I do, Rucker. You listening? A helicopter, 2 packs of burn, some chocolate digestives, please. It's a fucking accident now.
Jack kept insisting that he hadn't intentionally hurt anyone. He hoped to clear up the misunderstanding. The head guard said he was willing to believe him, so Jack released the hostage and threw away the weapon. He thought he would escape punishment, but he was far too naive.
Easy, son. I'll fucking do it. Scum you lot, I'll fucking scum.
Fuck off, you little fuck.
Just like that, Jack was sent back to solitary confinement. Meanwhile, Jack's father learned that his son had made an enemy of James. He personally warned James to stay away from Jack. Having spent over a decade in prison, Jack's father had become the second-in-command to the prison's crime boss. He held considerable influence within the facility. Even some guards gave him special treatment, but if his son kept causing trouble, it would eventually affect Kevin, the prison kingpin, and his underground operations. Kevin summoned Jack's father to his cell. He threatened him to keep his son under control. If he couldn't, Kevin would use the most extreme measures to eliminate the problem. Knowing full well how ruthless Kevin was, Jack's father quickly used his connections to obtain a large bag of snacks. He planned to visit solitary confinement and talk some sense into his son. The moment they met, he didn't ask how Jack was doing. Instead, he immediately issued a warning. He admitted that he was serving time for murder, and that he would spend the rest of his life in prison. As long as Jack behaved himself, he would eventually regain his freedom. But if he kept causing trouble, the guards would kill him, and make it look like a suicide. However, those words were not what Jack needed.
Tomorrow, you'll be back up on the way. So, take care of it. Come to see you know.
His voice nearly breaking, Jack said that the reason he had come to adult prison was to see his father again. His father was clearly stunned. After telling him to finish all the snacks, he turned around and walked away without looking back. While in solitary confinement, Jack passed the time eating snacks. 2 days later, his confinement ended. He returned to his cell, but he still refused to settle down. Looking at James, the man who had provoked him before, he decided to get revenge. While James was out in the yard, Jack quietly slipped into his cell. He ransacked the entire place, then casually stole 2 lighters. Afterward, he walked away as if nothing had happened. Next, he found the inmate he had accidentally injured earlier. Feeling guilty, he handed over the 2 lighters as an apology.
Double bubble.
But the moment he returned to his own cell, James realized someone had gone through his belongings. James instantly flew into a rage and swore revenge. Every bit of it was witnessed by Jack through the crack in the door. Watching James lose his temper, Jack looked like a child whose prank had succeeded, but he still had to clean up the mess he had made days earlier. The floor was covered in a mixture of sand and baby oil. At the same time, his father signed him up for a therapy group. He hoped that with the psychologist's help, his son could overcome his violent and rebellious behavior.
Listen to what the teacher has to say, alright?
Those words only made Jack more resistant. When the psychologist reminded him that smoking was prohibited, he ignored him completely.
We'll have a break, you can smoke by the window, but we're all ready to start now.
Watching from outside the room, his father became furious. He stormed inside, ready to teach his son a lesson. Fortunately, the psychologist stopped him in time. After confiscating Jack's cigarette, he instructed the guards to keep a close eye on him. Then he left. The moment Jack realized he was being watched, he exploded with anger. He charged toward the door, ready to fight the guards.
Antibiotics. Listen, you keep fucking looking at me like I've done something.
Look, his initial assessment is done extremely well. I would be grateful if you could escort him back to the wing.
He fucking threatened me. Could I have my pen back, please?
Thankfully, the psychologist skillfully calmed the situation. The riot was stopped before it could begin, but with a temper like his, trouble was inevitable. Sure enough, the moment he returned to his cell, a guard deliberately left the door unlocked. Not long afterward, several drug addicts rushed inside. They cornered him against the wall. A storm of punches and kicks rained down on him. Fortunately, students from the therapy group witnessed the attack. Without hesitation, they rushed into Jack's cell. Given a chance to breathe, Jack launched a furious counterattack. As he gradually lost control again, his fists carried years of bottled-up anger. Seeing this, the others immediately stopped him. Afterward, Jack thanked the 2 men. Unable to contain his curiosity, he asked why they had helped him. Only then did he learn that the psychologist had been worried about him, afraid he would keep getting into trouble. He had asked the group members to look out for him. What surprised Jack even more was that the psychologist wasn't a prison employee, and he had never accepted a single cent. He did all of this simply to help people who struggled to control themselves. The group members themselves had once been just as angry and violent as Jack, but now they had clearly changed. After hearing that, Jack's opinion of the psychologist began to shift for the first time. However, the moment he returned to his cell, his father followed him inside. He had witnessed the conversation between Jack and the group members, and it filled him with dissatisfaction and possessiveness. He couldn't understand why his son would seek help from others instead of him. In his eyes, his son seemed to be his personal property. After that, Jack attended a group session voluntarily for the first time. This time, he was much calmer. Perhaps the therapy was beginning to work. When it ended, he went straight to his father's cell. He sincerely wanted to have an equal conversation. He wanted his father to truly listen to him, instead of constantly giving orders from above. But his father simply wouldn't listen. He stubbornly assumed that Jack had been bullied and had come seeking his protection, but was too afraid to admit it. Faced with such an impossible conversation, Jack looked helpless and even more disappointed. He silently stood up, then walked away without looking back. Once again, their attempt at communication ended badly. He had no idea what would become of his relationship with his father. A direct confrontation seemed inevitable, but for now, he could only do what he had done on countless lonely nights: swallow all his emotions alone. Fortunately, as he attended more and more therapy sessions, his condition gradually improved. But James's revenge wasn't over. One day in the shower, Jack was suddenly attacked. The assailants were drug addicts sent by James, and they were clearly trying to kill him. Fortunately, he pretended to pass out and managed to turn the tables. After learning that James had ordered the attack, Jack was consumed by rage. He immediately returned to the prison, retrieved his hidden weapon, and went straight to James. After roughing him up, James revealed a shocking secret. The whole thing had actually been ordered by Kevin. Kevin had wanted him dead from the start. Jack lost control once again and stormed toward Kevin's cell just as he was about to attack. His father grabbed him and pinned him down. When Jack demanded answers, Kevin calmly denied everything, pretending he knew nothing about it. Without any evidence, Jack had no choice but to let it go. But deep down, his father knew the truth. James would never dare frame Kevin. Later, Kevin kept Jack behind for a private conversation. He told him that he wanted a quiet and peaceful prison, and that he didn't want Jack causing problems that might interfere with his business. Jack agreed, and the conflict appeared to be resolved. To help his son learn to control his emotions, his father even joined the therapy group himself. But clearly, the two of them were incapable of communicating. The moment they met, they started arguing fiercely. Ironically, the father's anger was even harder to control than the son's. After unleashing a barrage of rage, he stormed out. The way he lost control was practically a mirror image of Jack when he first arrived. His father's behavior also affected Jack. Soon afterward, he clashed with other group members. Before long, everyone in the group lost control. They shouted insults and even came to blows. Yet this time, Jack was the first to calm down. He suppressed his anger, urged everyone to stop fighting, and took the initiative to apologize. Gradually, the room settled down. However, this incident caught the captain's attention. She immediately called the warden. The warden assumed Jack was causing trouble again, ignoring the psychologist's explanation. He disbanded the therapy group that had just begun showing results. But the truth was far more complicated. The people behind it wanted Jack to disappear from the prison forever. As for the person responsible for the entire mess, Jack directed all of his anger at his father.
Fucking running your guns in the fucking group. Slinging your tampon around. Till off the fucking jail come on top. Embarrassing.
He mercilessly mocked him, calling him arrogant, preachy, immature, and obsessed with saving face. Every word struck directly at his father's deepest insecurities. Unable to take it anymore, his father slapped him across the face. Although he immediately realized he had lost control, the emotions Jack had suppressed for years finally erupted. Father and son finally exploded into a direct confrontation. Jack threw punch after punch without mercy. Each strike seemed aimed at smashing out all his pain. His father refused to back down and punched back just as hard. But after a brief struggle, his father suddenly pulled his punches, deliberately allowing his son to defeat him. Then he turned to leave with a grim expression, but Jack wasn't finished. He followed behind his father, continuing to provoke him, trying to reignite the fight. At that moment, Kevin appeared once again, blocking Jack's path. He warned him not to forget their previous conversation. Jack couldn't care less about the lecture. He immediately threw a punch and sent Kevin crashing to the ground, publicly humiliating the prison boss. Was no small matter. Afraid his son would make things worse, his father rushed after him, trying to stop him, but Jack had completely lost control. Soon, a large group of guards arrived and forcibly separated the two. Even while being restrained, father and son continued screaming insults at each other across the crowd. After the chaos subsided, both of them were thrown into solitary confinement. But the moment his father entered the cell, his emotions completely exploded. He slammed himself against the heavy steel door, roaring at the top of his lungs. Only after the guards blasted him with a high-pressure water hose did he calm down slightly. Then, he suddenly realized something. There wasn't a single sound coming from his son's cell next door. He immediately began calling out for Jack, again and again. He had no idea what the guards might have done to him.
You fucking touched him! Come on, boy, answer me! Don't fucking leave me hanging like this! And answer me! I need to hear your fucking voice!
Oh, fuck off!
Finally, he heard his son's voice and let out a sigh of relief. But when he learned the guards hadn't beaten Jack, his heart sank. If something like this happened and they didn't beat him, it meant they were planning something much worse. In fact, the captain had already received Kevin's orders. Jack was to be killed immediately. To save his son, his father threatened suicide, luring over a guard he trusted. The moment the guard removed his handcuffs, he knocked him unconscious. Then he covered the man with a blanket, making it appear as though he was still lying there himself. After escaping solitary confinement, he headed straight for Kevin's cell. Meanwhile, the captain had already arrived at Jack's cell with several guards. On the other side, his father was still trying to convince Kevin to spare his son. Kevin appeared agreeable, even pretending to care about both father and son. But secretly, his hand reached for a weapon hidden beneath the table. The two immediately grappled with each other, driven by a willingness to die if necessary. Jack's father quickly pinned Kevin to the ground. But by the time he reached his son's cell, Jack had already been suspended from the wall by the guards. They were preparing to stage his death as a suicide by hanging. Seeing another man willing to die, the captain decided to eliminate both father and son. But now, nothing could stop a father's determination to save his child. In just a few moves, he took down two guards. Realizing the situation had turned, the captain cut the rope, but Jack wasn't moving. His father pulled him tightly into his arms. Consumed by guilt and fear, he couldn't accept losing his son like this. Fortunately, Jack had only passed out from lack of oxygen. When he finally woke up, father and son embraced each other tightly. Jack cried like a child who had made a terrible mistake. It was the first true hug they had ever shared. A few days later, Jack's injuries gradually improved. Friends from the therapy group visited him through the window. Their sincere words of concern brought a warmth he hadn't felt in years. Not long afterward, the cell door suddenly opened. A guard told him he had 30 minutes of recreation time. It turned out that because his father had dealt with Kevin, he was being transferred to a maximum security prison.
Dad!
At the moment of parting, the two pressed their faces together. Neither wanted to let go. The barrier between father and son was finally gone.
Right, Dad.
And with that, the film came to an end.